Have you ever felt that something in your home seems to be blocking God's blessings, especially during this sacred time of Lent? That feeling of spiritual heaviness, like something invisible is standing between you and the divine presence you so deeply desire. My dear brothers and sisters, today I'm bringing you a message that St. Padre Pio revealed to many of his spiritual children, but that few discuss openly in our modern world. It's about the objects in your home that could be preventing you from experiencing the full power of this Lenten season. Lent is not just about giving up chocolate or saying more prayers. It's a profound spiritual journey of purification and preparation. It's a sacred time when we're called to cleanse not only our souls, but also our surroundings. Our homes should become sanctuaries where God's grace can flow freely, where angels feel welcome, where spiritual growth is nurtured. But Padre Pio, with his profound spiritual insights, warned that certain common objects in our homes can become stumbling blocks on our path to God. Objects that might seem innocent or even beautiful to our eyes, but that carry spiritual weight we often fail to recognize. You might be wondering, what could I possibly have in my home that would concern a saint like Padre Pio? The truth might surprise you. These aren't just obvious items like occult symbols or pagan statues. They're often everyday things that have found their way into our homes without us realizing their spiritual impact. Today, I'm going to share with you 6 categories of objects that Padre Pio advised should not be in our homes during Lent. Some of these revelations might surprise you, challenge you, or even make you uncomfortable. But I'm sharing them with you because I care deeply about your spiritual well-being and the protection of your family. As Padre Pio himself would say, pray, hope, and don't worry. This message isn't meant to cause fear, but to bring awareness and spiritual freedom. By the end of this video, you'll have practical knowledge on how to transform your home into a true sanctuary during this Lenten season. Before we continue, if you believe your home should be a sacred space where God's presence dwells freely, write in the comments, "My home will be a sanctuary for Christ this Lent." Your declaration of faith matters, and it sets your intention for the transformation we'll discuss today. Stay with me until the end, because the 6th category of objects is perhaps the most surprising, yet the most powerful for your spiritual transformation during Lent. It's a revelation that has changed countless lives when put into practice. Are you ready to discover what might be blocking God's blessings in your home? Let's begin this journey of spiritual household cleansing together, guided by the wisdom of St. Padre Pio. Before we dive into these life-changing revelations from Padre Pio, I want to share something special with you. Many of you have been asking for deeper guidance on how to apply Padre Pio's spiritual wisdom in your daily lives. That's why we've created The Spiritual Secrets of St. Padre Pio, an ebook filled with powerful prayers, reflections based on his teachings, and practical advice to strengthen your spirituality. This resource is especially valuable during Lent, as it contains Padre Pio's specific guidance for this sacred season, including his lesser-known teachings about purifying your home and heart. If today's message resonates with you, this ebook will take your spiritual journey even further. You'll find the link in the pinned comment below. It's our mission to spread these teachings, so we've made it accessible for everyone seeking spiritual growth during this Lenten season. Now, let's continue with our exploration of the objects Padre Pio warns against keeping in our homes. The first category of items Padre Pio cautioned against might surprise you. It's certain clothing and accessories we keep in our homes. Our wardrobes are more than just storage for fabric. They contain expressions of our identity and values. Padre Pio, with his remarkable spiritual sensitivity, understood that what we wear and keep can carry spiritual significance. Consider the symbols, messages, and images displayed on the clothes hanging in your closet. Some garments feature symbols that have occult origins, even if they've become popularized as fashion. Others display messages promoting values directly opposed to Christian virtues, phrases encouraging pride, vanity, rebellion against moral values, or disrespect towards sacred realities. Padre Pio taught that everything in our lives should reflect our relationship with God. He would often tell his spiritual children, "Your exterior appearance is a reflection of your interior disposition." During Lent, a season of spiritual refinement, he encouraged a thorough examination of our possessions, beginning with our clothing. I remember meeting Maria, a devoted woman who came to our parish retreat last year. She shared how she had been experiencing persistent spiritual dryness despite her regular prayers. After hearing about Padre Pio's teachings on household objects, she decided to review her wardrobe. She was shocked to discover several items with symbols she'd never paid attention to, including Eastern religious symbols contrary to her faith and shirts, with subtle messages glorifying self-centered attitudes. "I never connected my spiritual struggles with these items," Maria confessed. "They were just fashion to me. But after removing them during Lent last year, I experienced a tangible sense of spiritual lightness I hadn't felt in years. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my prayer life. This Lent, Padre Pio invites us to examine our closets with spiritual eyes. Ask yourself these questions. Does this garment honor God? Would I feel comfortable wearing this in the presence of Christ? Does this item reflect the values I profess with my faith? The solution isn't necessarily to discard everything, but to be intentional about what we keep in our sacred space, our home. Items that don't align with your spiritual values can be donated to those in need, transforming something potentially problematic into an act of Lenten charity. Remember, this purification isn't about rigid rules, but about creating harmony between our faith and our living environment. As Padre Pio often said, the spiritual life must overflow into every aspect of your existence. The second category Padre Pio cautioned about involves the visual elements in our homes, the artwork, decorations, and images that surround us daily. These aren't just aesthetic choices, they're powerful influences on our spiritual atmosphere. Our homes should be, as Padre Pio described, small sanctuaries where heaven touches earth. Yet many of us have unknowingly introduced elements that create spiritual discord rather than harmony. Artwork depicting violence, sculptures embodying materialistic values, abstract pieces conveying chaos rather than peace, or images glorifying worldly success over spiritual wealth. All these can subtly affect our spiritual well-being. Think of your home as a garden for your soul. Every visual element is either nurturing spiritual growth or introducing weeds that choke it. During Lent, when we are especially focused on spiritual cultivation, Padre Pio advised a careful assessment of what we allow to grow in this garden. James, a business executive I counseled, shared a profound testimony about this very matter. His home office was decorated with aggressive, competitive imagery, art that he believed motivated his professional drive. During a particularly difficult Lent, when he felt spiritually empty despite his success, he decided to apply Padre Pio's teaching. "I replaced those images with a simple crucifix and a serene landscape," James told me. "I was skeptical at first, thinking it was just superstition. But within weeks, I noticed not just a spiritual change, but a transformation in how I approached my work. I became more ethical, more compassionate with my employees, yet somehow more successful. The constant internal aggression I'd been feeding had been exhausting me spiritually." Padre Pio wasn't suggesting we live in austere environments with bare walls. Rather, he encouraged surrounding ourselves with beauty that elevates the soul toward God. Consider images of natural beauty that reflect the Creator's hand, religious art that inspires devotion, or symbols that remind us of eternal truths. During Lent, examine each room in your home and ask, does the visual environment here lead my heart toward prayer? Do these images and objects create a sense of peace and spiritual elevation? Would Padre Pio, with his heightened spiritual sensitivity, feel at home here? You might consider creating a sacred corner in your living space, a focal point with meaningful religious items where family prayer can occur. This becomes an anchor for the spiritual atmosphere of the entire home. As Padre Pio wisely noted, the eyes are the windows of the soul. What our eyes regularly behold shapes our interior life. This Lent, let's ensure what we see daily in our homes nourishes rather than depletes our spiritual reserves. The third category Padre Pio warned about is perhaps the most subtle yet profoundly impactful: objects connected to our past that we keep in our homes. Lent is a time of spiritual unburdening, yet many of us live surrounded by physical reminders of spiritual burdens we've yet to release. Consider the items tucked away in drawers and boxes, gifts from broken relationships, mementos from periods of your life marked by sin or suffering, objects associated with painful memories or people who harmed you. Padre Pio, with his deep understanding of spiritual healing, recognized that these physical connections can act as invisible chains, binding us to past wounds, preventing the complete healing God desires for us. These objects operate like spiritual anchors, holding us in place when God is calling us to move forward. During Lent, a season of liberation and renewal, Padre Pio encouraged a compassionate but thorough inventory of these emotional attachments. Sarah's story illustrates this principle powerfully. A woman in her 50s, she had kept a collection of letters and gifts from a relationship that had ended painfully 20 years earlier. These items remained hidden in a trunk in her attic, rarely seen, but energetically present in her home. Every Lent, I would pray for healing from that relationship, she shared, but I never considered that keeping these mementos was like trying to heal a wound while periodically reopening it. Padre Pio's teaching about objects from the past finally gave me the courage to release these things. Sarah described the experience of finally releasing these items as a weightlifting that I didn't even know I was carrying. My prayers during Lent became more powerful, more authentic. It wasn't just emotional healing, it was spiritual freedom. This Lenten season, Padre Pio invites us to ask courageously, what am I holding on to that God is asking me to release? What objects in my home represent chapters of my life that heaven has already healed or desires to heal? What physical items are connected to spiritual and emotional wounds? The process might be challenging, but it aligns perfectly with the Lenten journey of unburdening. You might consider a ritual of release, perhaps a prayer as you thoughtfully remove these items, thanking God for the healing He has brought and continues to bring into your life. As Padre Pio beautifully taught, the past should be a springboard, not an anchor. This Lent, let your home reflect not what once bound you, but what now frees you. The fourth category of concern for Padre Pio, though he lived before its full manifestation, is the modern invasion of technology and media in our homes. During Lent, a season designed for spiritual listening, our homes often remain filled with constant noise, notifications, and digital distractions. While Padre Pio couldn't have known about smartphones or streaming services, his spiritual principles apply profoundly to our digital age. He repeatedly emphasized the necessity of silence for encountering God, saying, "In the silence of the heart, God speaks." Yet many of our homes have no space for silence, every room filled with televisions, computers, tablets, and phones, all competing for our attention. The issue isn't technology itself, but how it has colonized our sacred spaces, leaving no room for the divine whisper. During Lent especially, Padre Pio would caution against the constant digital consumption that numbs our spiritual sensitivity and crowds out prayer. Consider how many of us reach for our phones before reaching for our Bibles, check social media before checking in with God, or fall asleep to streaming shows rather than evening prayer. These habits form invisible barriers to the spiritual awakening Lent invites us to experience. I'm reminded of David, a young professional who struggled with what he called spiritual dryness, despite his sincere desire for a deeper faith. After learning about Padre Pio's emphasis on sacred silence, he decided to transform his technology use during Lent. I created technology-free zones in my home, including my bedroom and dining area, David explained. And I also established digital sundowns, turning off all screens 2 hours before bed. The first few days were surprisingly difficult, like an addiction withdrawal. But by the second week of Lent, I experienced prayer in a way I never had before. The constant mental chatter had quieted, and I could finally hear God's voice in the silence. This Lent, Padre Pio would invite us to assess: has technology become an idol, occupying the central place in our home that should belong to God? Do screens dictate our attention more than prayer? Has digital noise drowned out the still, small voice of the divine? Practical steps might include designating certain areas as screen-free zones, establishing technology fasts during specific hours, being intentional about content consumption, or creating a digital Sabbath one day each week during Lent. Remember, the goal isn't technological asceticism for its own sake, but creating space for what truly matters. As Padre Pio would remind us, the measure of love is to love without measure. This Lent, let's measure our technology use against our love for God, ensuring our homes facilitate rather than frustrate our spiritual connection. The fifth category that Padre Pio cautioned about concerns the literature and entertainment we keep in our homes. Padre Pio was himself an avid reader who understood the profound impact of words on the human spirit. Oi, what you read, he would tell his spiritual children, becomes the furniture of your mind. Yet many homes today contain books, magazines, and entertainment materials that, rather than building up the soul, subtly undermine our spiritual foundations. During Lent, when we're called to renew our minds, the reading materials and entertainment options within our homes deserve particular attention. Consider the books on your shelves or e-readers. Some may contain philosophies that directly contradict gospel values, promoting relativism, materialism, or ideologies incompatible with faith. Others might glamorize sin or mock what's sacred. Some seemingly innocent fiction might be spiritually empty at best or spiritually harmful at worst. The issue extends beyond books to the movies, music, and shows we store digitally or physically in our homes. Padre Pio, with his remarkable spiritual sensitivity, could discern how these materials affect the spiritual atmosphere of a home. What might seem like harmless entertainment to us could be creating spiritual static that interferes with deeper communion with God. This principle became evident to Rebecca, a mother of 3 teenagers, who decided to apply Padre Pio's teaching during Lent last year. She conducted a family inventory of their books, music, and digital entertainment, discussing why certain materials might not align with their faith. It wasn't about imposing harsh rules, Rebecca shared. It was about raising awareness. We replaced some items with spiritually enriching alternatives, and for the entertainment we decided wasn't beneficial. We discussed why as a family. The conversations alone were transformative, but the real miracle was the change in our home's atmosphere. There was more peace, more joy, and somehow more space for God. My teenagers even noticed the difference. This Lent, Padre Pio invites us to examine: does this book, movie, or music lead me closer to Christ or away from Him? Does it elevate my thoughts or lower them? Would I be comfortable if Jesus himself browsed my entertainment collection? Consider replacing spiritually problematic materials with life-giving alternatives, the biographies of saints, the catechism, or texts that deepen your understanding of faith. For entertainment, seek options that inspire virtue rather than vice, that elevate rather than degrade. As Padre Pio wisely observed, what feeds your mind eventually fills your heart. This Lent, let's ensure our homes contain nourishment for both. The sixth and final category that Padre Pio warned against keeping in our homes during Lent is perhaps the most surprising yet universally applicable: excessive material accumulation. Detachment is a core practice of Lent, yet many of our homes have become warehouses of unnecessary possessions that silently hinder our spiritual growth. Padre Pio lived with remarkable simplicity. His cell contained only the bare essentials. This wasn't mere asceticism, it was spiritual wisdom. He understood that material excess creates spiritual heaviness. The more things you own, he would counsel, the more things own you. During Lent, when we're called to spiritual lightness and freedom, our cluttered closets, overstuffed garages, and packed storage spaces represent more than organizational challenges. They're spiritual obstacles. They stand as monuments to attachment, consumption, and the false security we place in possessions. Look around your home with honest eyes. How many items do you own that you never use? Clothes unworn for years, kitchen gadgets gathering dust, decorative items that serve no purpose, collections that consume space but add no value to your life. Each unused item could bless someone in need, yet we hold on, often without knowing why. Christ's words echo with particular force during Lent. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Matthew 6:19-20. I remember counseling Michael, a successful businessman whose home was filled with expensive possessions. During one Lent, feeling spiritually stagnant, he decided to apply Padre Pio's teaching on detachment. I began with just one room, Michael explained. I asked of each item, does this help me love God or others better? If not, I released it. The process was painful at first. I'd invested so much of my identity in these things. But with each item I gave away, I felt lighter. By Easter, not only was my home transformed, but so was my heart. I discovered a freedom I hadn't known was possible. This Lent, Padre Pio invites us to this liberating practice. Choose at least one area of your home, a closet, a room, or even a single drawer. Ask of each item, does this serve a genuine need? Could it better serve someone else? Is my attachment to this healthy or hindering? The goal isn't barren minimalism, but spiritual freedom. As Padre Pio simply stated, empty your house so God can fill it. My dear friends, we've journeyed together through Padre Pio's powerful teachings about the objects in our homes that might be hindering our spiritual growth during this sacred Lenten season. We've explored how our clothing, decorations, objects from our past, technology, literature, and material accumulation can either support or hinder our spiritual journey. These teachings aren't about rigid rules or superstition. They're about creating a home environment that nurtures our relationship with God. They're about removing obstacles so that grace can flow more freely in our lives and families. As Padre Pio would say, the home is the domestic church where faith is first nurtured or first neglected. The transformation that can occur when we apply these principles is nothing short of remarkable. I'm reminded of a family I worked with last year, Thomas and Angela and their 3 children. They had been experiencing persistent family conflict, spiritual dryness, and a sense of heaviness in their home despite their regular mass attendance and prayers. During Lent, they committed to applying all 6 categories of Padre Pio's teaching on household objects. They involved their children in age-appropriate ways, explaining the spiritual purpose behind each change. They removed clothing with inappropriate messages, replaced certain artwork with images that inspired faith, released objects tied to painful memories, established technology-free zones and times, reviewed and refreshed their families' reading and entertainment materials, and significantly decluttered their home, donating many items to those in need. The first week was challenging, Angela shared. There was resistance, especially around the technology boundaries. But by the 3rd week of Lent, something shifted. The atmosphere in our home changed. There was more laughter, more meaningful conversations. Our evening prayers, which had become routine, suddenly felt alive again. Thomas added, what surprised me most was how these external changes affected our internal family dynamics. Arguments decreased, patience increased. It was as if removing the physical clutter allowed emotional and spiritual space to open up between us. Their oldest child offered perhaps the most profound observation. Our house feels peaceful now. It feels like God lives here with us. This, my friends, is the invitation Padre Pio extends to each of us this Lent, to create homes where it feels like God lives here with us, not through extravagant religious displays, but through thoughtful stewardship of our physical environment that reflects our spiritual values. Today, I challenge you to take one concrete step from what you've learned. Choose just one category we've discussed and make one change in your home. Remove one item that doesn't align with your faith. Create one technology-free zone. Donate something you're unnecessarily attached to. Start small, but start today. Remember Padre Pio's profound words. Prayer is the best weapon we possess. It is the key that opens the heart of God. Let your home become a place that facilitates rather than hinders that prayer. Let every object within it either support your spiritual journey or make room for something that does. If this message has touched your heart today, please write in the comments. My home will be transformed this Lent. Your declaration matters. It sets an intention that angels honor and that God blesses. And please share this video with someone you love who might benefit from creating a more spiritually nurturing home environment. Before I close, if you found value in today's teaching, please support our mission of spreading Padre Pio's wisdom by subscribing to our channel and clicking the notification bell. Your simple gesture helps us reach more souls with these life-changing spiritual truths. Let me leave you with one final thought from Padre Pio. Your home on earth should prepare you for your eternal home in heaven. This Lent, let's take this wisdom to heart, creating homes that are truly forecourts of heaven, places where faith flourishes, where grace abounds, and where God's presence is palpably felt. May God bless you, your family, and your home during this holy season of Lent. Until next time, remember Padre Pio's words: pray, hope, and don't worry. God is with you in this journey of transformation. Dear friends, if this message has touched your heart, we need your support to continue sharing Padre Pio's teachings with more people. Your small action makes a big difference in our spiritual mission. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs this blessing, and if you're not yet a member of our community, we invite you to join today. Each new member allows us to bring these words of faith and hope to more homes. Remember, together we form a family in Christ, and with your support, we can continue to be a beacon of light in these times. May God abundantly bless you for your generosity.